All right.
All right, well, let's get started here. So, welcome. Today we are joined with Dr. Aaron. He will be giving us a talk today. Just a couple of announcements here about chiropractic. Thanks for joining us on Facebook and on YouTube. Just wanted to give an announcement about our supplement of the month. In case our viewers are watching here about chiropractic, we have a supplement of the month every month. And so for 10% off, you can get Immuplex from Standard Process. We do carry two types. We have a 90 capsule. This is also 10% off. And a 150 capsule, 10% off here at Belch Chiropractic for the month of September. Another announcement is that Belch Chiropractic, we are partnered with Frank's Gym here. They are just down the street with us, and so we do our ball class every Thursday from 9 to 9:30. And so if you are looking for something to do or want to keep some motion in going, join us at Frank's Gym. We are hosting a ball class at Frank's Gym from 9 to 9:30 every Thursdays. Other than that, I will hand it on over to our awesome guest speaker for today, Dr. Aaron.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon, good evening, those that can join us. If not later, I know this is one of the last 70-degree days we'll have here in Wausau for a while. So if you're enjoying this later than live, thanks for tuning in later. Tonight we're going to go over today's topic, Health from Within. The topic title was generated by Dr. Matt. We let Dr. Bouch think up some titles and we didn't go with those. So a couple things that and especially kind of where the title came from. It seems, and Jen, am I supposed to be looking at this one or this one? Okay. So if I stare at one or the other, I just feel. A couple of things throughout this summer, that I've noticed as far as health. Everything is external now. Even if you look over here at our clinic, we have. Here's Dr. Lexi. We have plexiglass up here. We're told to stay away from people. We're told to wear masks and everything. It's almost like outside in health, and I don't hear as much as far as, well, what can we do to benefit or boost as our internal health? So that's where the topic came up tonight. So we'll go over a couple things. Kind of, you'll see a lot of our talks follow a mantra of eat well, think well, move well, and we usually focus in on one topic. Tonight we'll actually brush on all three of them. I thought I'd throw that up there. That was caught 2.5 weeks ago in Green Bay. It was my nicest fish of the summer, a 27-inch walleye. So I do things other than chiropractic successfully at times. This a theme I had heard 3 years ago. This is still one of my favorite quotes. I like to use this mantra almost on a weekly basis. If you can see that in the camera, it says, if you continuously compete with others, you become bitter. But if you continuously compete with yourself, you become better. And that'll be a theme for this talk as well. It's easy to see someone who's really healthy, taking care of themselves, and put ourselves down, or someone who's done really well in their career. But keep in mind, in game of life, it's basically you competing with you. And so as far as health goes, maybe you're not in the best position right now, but where will you be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now? I always like that, it's either one day or day one. The choice is yours. So this will be the theme tonight. And you Spider-Man fans out there, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, your greatest wealth is your health. One of the things tonight, and for a lot of different diseases and things like that out there, we always hear, well, it's my genes or it's my genetics. And if you look at this graph here, or Venn diagram, yeah, genetics do play a role. In fact, if you look at most mammalian species, less than 5% of diseases are truly what are called genetic, things like trisomy 21 or cystic fibrosis. We also have what's called epigenetics. Basically, you can change how your DNA gets expressed based on that eat well, think well, move well. Let's say you eat healthy, let's say you exercise, let's say you have a good positive outlook. You can actually change the expression of your genetic code. I always like to think of it as in the genetics are like a cookbook. Well, who decides what gets cooked in the kitchen? Well, it's not the cookbook, it's the chef. And you can think of the chef almost as far as epigenetics and your environment. So you can take two identical twins, and if someone does everything correct throughout a lifetime and someone who doesn't, Obviously, the one who did everything healthy is going to express their genes way differently down the line. This right here is from 10 years ago, Stanford Medicine. Although the risks of developing chronic disease are attributed to both genetic and environmental factors, 70 to 90% of disease risks are probably due to differences in environment. So what that basically means, and we kind of call it an 80-20 rule, 80% of your health are a lot of the factors that you do on your own. Are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? As far as mentally, are you watching the news every day? That obviously doesn't help. A couple of quick facts about the human body. I think sometimes we think, yep, the human body is meant to break down and we're meant to get disease. And I believe the average 65-year-old now takes 7 different prescription meds every single day. By 85, that's 11 different meds a day. But the human body is amazing. In fact, we were created where 2 cells came together, formed a zygote, and formed this fully functioning organism. Your body is composed of nearly 40 trillion cells. That's trillion with a T. The body is home to 100 trillion bacteria and 400 trillion viruses. Talk louder? Should I? Oh, okay. I'll try to talk louder. Every second, your body makes 25 million new cells. You create new red blood cells every 120 days on average, and new white blood cells every 2 to 4 days. More than 100,000 chemical reactions take place in every eukaryotic cell every second. And so why I brought up those points here, because sometimes, let's say a person's 50 years old and they haven't made good decisions. Well, if you think of this, if you're creating 25 million new cells, if you start making healthy choices even today, you can see differences within a week, a month, 6 months, a year. The changes can be relatively quick. Now, given if you made bad health choices for 50 years, you're not going to have a six-pack going to Frank's gym and taking some supplements within a week. But internally, you can start to be healthier that day. So this will be the theme tonight, and you'll notice a lot of the talks that we give here. So think positive, eat better, exercise often, feel good. Eat well, think well, move well. This was a book that we mentioned several times, several talks. Dr. Bouch on movement, last couple of talks he mentioned. I read this book 3 years ago. It's a fairly simple read, but it talks about health of the body as far as moving and how it actually can help, and especially with kids, how it actually can help their intellect. So as kids, especially this year with a lot of the virtual learning and we're more sedentary, it's almost like you got to schedule in outside time or time to work out every single day. In fact, if they're struggling with this subject, part of this book that I found interesting, if they were struggling with math and they exercised the hour right before that, they tended to do better in that subject. So if you're struggling with the subject, one of the easiest things you can do, go for a walk, start working out, and then do your studying. I think when I was a kid, it was more so get your homework done now, and then you can go play. But then again, in high school, I was in sports all throughout the year, so we did practice, and then I did homework. So maybe that benefited me. As far as move well, this is what Dr. Bouch was talking about last time, global motion. So global motion is things like flexibility, aerobic exercise, anaerobic exercise. So weight training, just as much as you shouldn't be doing cardio nonstop, you should also include some weight training in there. Congrats to those people. There was a couple of people who completed the Ironman yesterday down in Madison, despite not having an official Ironman. Joel Becker, chiropractor who used to intern here, I saw he had finished it. Congrats to him. Besides global motion, we also need what's called intersegmental motion. And this is where chiropractic plays a role. Because sometimes it's like, well, I work out every day and I run, I'm doing all this. Where does chiropractic come into play? Well, when you look at the spine, and this is an example of someone who's lost intersegmental motion. Okay, this is a lower back, this is a lumbar x-ray. You can see the vertebrae here. And these spaces right here, these are the discs. Can you see how much thicker this and this one are versus these two? And especially more than this one? Well, this is a loss of intersegmental motion. Okay, this person may have exercised, they may have had good posture and everything, but if you have one area that becomes stuck and not moving, it can continue to degenerate. In fact, sometimes this is where we'll hear, well, isn't arthritis just old age, wear and tear? Well, I'd buy into that, but aren't these discs all the same age? Why does this one look like that of a 20-year-old and that one looks like someone in their 70s or 80s? So it's not just a matter of age. This is what intersegmental motion or loss of looks like on an MRI. Actually, here's an X-ray here, but you can see on the MRI, so you have your tailbone down here and you have the disc, but where you see these green arrows, they're nice and white, that's a fluid-filled disc. Look at this L5 area. It's dark. Okay? This is a disc that potentially is going to degenerate and eventually could be someone, if it herniates, long time down the road, where you may need something like surgery. So this is our friend, the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates. Chiropractors love this phrase, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. I always think when famous people get quoted as something, it was probably his buddy Fred who said it. And since he's famous, he got credit for it. This is why we say look to the spine. So if you notice coming out of the spine, look at all these parts right in through here. We can see the lungs, we see the liver, we see the heart, we see the intestines. It's because when you take a look at the spine, between the computer of the body, the brain and spinal cord, all the extensions that come out of the spine control every other part of the body. This is one of my favorites, especially in this mid-lower part of the back. This affects your stomach and it also affects your colon. So we can have people come in here and they come in for back pain and they start getting adjusted in their lower back and boy, my constipation went away. My acid reflux went away. Sometimes it's not a dietary issue, it's actually a neurological issue. So this is one of the reasons we always talk about in our office what we call rule of opposites. So when you look at a person's posture from the side, my ear, my shoulder, my hip, and ankle should all be in alignment. The more I get into this, what we call land of the slumpies, almost kid posture, teenage posture now, over time that can start to put pressure on parts of the spine like your discs and eventually the nerve roots. And if it affects your nerve roots, then you can start to have pain in the arms and the legs, in the back. But if I look at all the nerves that come out of the spine, most people would think, well, if I had arthritis or something pinching, wouldn't it cause pain? Yeah, about 10 to 18% of the time. The vast majority of the time, a pinched nerve doesn't cause pain, which is good because we're not in pain all the time, but also bad, no difference than someone who said, yeah, I just found out I had a cavity even though my tooth didn't hurt. Boy, I had a friend diagnosed with cancer or heart disease. By the time you get symptoms, it's usually progressed for a long time. So how do we assess the nervous system? Well, there's a couple things we can do. In here, your medical doctor, they can do an exam, they can do x-rays, they can do an MRI, nerve conduction, if you think a carpal tunnel test, and we can also assess the brain. We have things right now that are called functional MRI scans. Especially with kids going back to school, virtual learning, very important graph. And I can't pronounce the gentleman's last name, Dr. Kenneth Hansaraj, if I said that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. But he published this in Surgical Technology International, and they actually measured what the effect of using a cellular device and putting your head forward, how much pressure it would put. So you can see here at a neutral position, average head somewhere between 10 and 16 pounds. Okay? But as you get into a texting position, you put over 60 pounds of pressure on the base of your spine, or actually the base of your neck, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. But if I were to hold a bowling ball up here for a long, long time, eventually it would be much harder than it would here. Well, what does your body do? It starts to lay down more tissue, more muscle back here. And since we're cosmetically driven in our country, I tell people, try to maintain good posture, make sure you have your neck assessed, have a good neck curve, because you'll avoid that lump on the back of your neck. Then it's like, oh, what do I have to do so I don't get a lump? That could also come from other things, nutritionally, cortisol and that, but that's one of the biggest things. Whenever I see someone with a reverse neck curve, my first thought is, when are they going to start to develop that lump on the back of their neck? This right here just shows progression. So we can see a normal neck on top. We see phase 1 degeneration, phase 2, and phase 3. And if you can see in here closer, basically over time what will start to happen, if these discs break down, the body shores them up with calcium. And so I like to think of arthritis almost as the body, it's actually doing what it's designed to do. It's protecting it. In a perfect scenario, though, we would stay in this position. And I do have patients that are in their 70s and 80s that have taken care of their spine, been adjusted, very active. Their spines look no different than a 20, 30-year-old. Unfortunately, we're starting to see this phase 2 degeneration where you actually start to see discs going thinner. I had 3 patients last year in their 30s with this. So unfortunately, we're seeing younger and younger adults get this. As far as pain, and it's not just what pain does to the body, it affects our mood, but they've also shown, there's a couple of studies that show it can actually shrink parts of the brain. Now, I don't want to be an alarmist. They were talking about 1/100th of the brain's mass to 1/1000th, but still, chronic pain over the year does shrink the brain. For some people, and this is one of those, this is actually the studies from JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, 1998. One of the things we see when people start to get neck pain, what do? They start popping NSAIDs. So your Aleve, your Advil. And this is from 1998. We had 275 million people back then. We have 50 million more people nowadays. But even then, it was causing 16,500 deaths a year, meaning 45 people a day die from Advil and other Advil-related drugs. And I don't see any newscasts that are constantly counting how many people have died of NSAIDs today. It's just something we normally think, and I don't even think of it if I were to pop an Advil, but what it can actually do long term is actually cause holes in the GI tract. Moving on from move well to eat well. I always like this. So me, after eating one healthy meal, I wonder how much weight I've lost. So a lot of us, and especially summertime, I'll admit I don't eat the healthiest by any means. So, hopefully starting, I believe Dr. Lexi said she wants to do a detox in October. So I'll probably join her for that. Couple things as far as eat well, because we hear it all the time. Well, eating healthy is so complicated, it's so expensive, and it's not all that complicated. So you look at what a human body needs to survive. The human body needs essential amino acids. Does anyone know what an amino acid, if we put a bunch of them together, what that becomes? Protein. So the human body needs 9, and there's actually, if you got nitpicky, they say 22 now, but basically 9 of the 20 amino acids are essential, meaning your body can't produce them, you have to ingest them. So that's one of the easiest things you can make sure that you're doing, adequate amino acids every day. So a general rule to follow, 0.5 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight of your ideal weight. We see some bodybuilders doing up to 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight a day, but usually 0.5 to 1 gram should be adequate. You also need essential fatty acids. So this is if a person isn't eating things like fish in that each week, you can take a good quality fish oil, EPA and DHA. You have 13 essential vitamins. Those are your 8 B vitamins, A, D, E, and K, and they also throw in vitamin C there. You have 16 essential minerals, and that's it. And in fact, if you got nitpicky, they say to make a quality human, as far as taking a multi, you need about 90 different essential vitamins and minerals. But those are the basic ones. Now, not just ingesting them, you also have to absorb them. So I always like that saying, you are what you absorb, not you are what you eat. So if you're not absorbing those, it's still not doing the same thing. Sometimes when people show me their 1 a day, which great, you're taking something besides nothing. But if it's in a form that's super stable that your body can't absorb, it doesn't do anything. This right here is a couple of the different essential amino acids. We'll probably do a talk in the future just on digestion, protein, and how important these are. So these right here are your 9 essential amino acids, and these can be created from these. So obtained from nutrition means essential. Made by the body means it's non-essential. Some of these become conditionally essential if you're under a ton of stress. Some people need to get extra glutamine. So when someone says, geez, I have terrible gut conditions, I have IBS, I have Crohn's, what else do I need? If they're under a ton of stress, even though this is a non-essential amino acid, they need extra glutamine a day, something like 5 to 10 grams a day. In order to digest proteins, one of the things we'll even talk about as far as stress goes, let's say a person's under a ton of stress. Think of it 10,000 years ago, if a grizzly bear is going to eat you, you really don't think of growing healthy hair, skin, nails, breaking down food. You're naturally going to turn down digestion. So in a chronic stress state, if you don't have enough stomach acid, it's really tough to break down proteins to absorb them. This is one of the cases sometimes we'll recommend a digestive aid for people. Into amino acids, couple of random points here. So this will be something even on my own body. Dr. Bouch has warned me for years on this. One of my vices besides bacon is caffeine. Chronic caffeine use can deplete certain amino acids. 2 of them, tyrosine and phenylalanine. Now, kind of interesting, your body can actually make tyrosine from phenylalanine, but if you're under a ton of stress, taking more caffeine, and you start to really deplete things like phenylalanine and tyrosine, you can actually start getting low levels of dopamine and adrenaline. So you don't feel as good and you're chronically tired. And that's, unfortunately, with caffeine, the more of it you take, the more of it you need. A couple other things with amino acids, and we see more and more of this, fibromyalgia. Has anyone heard of fibromyalgia? So first, I believe it was first not discovered, but named in the late 80s. I believe it was Journal of Rheumatology. But basically widespread muscle pain. And for some of these, especially people who have had this for a long time, there is a nutritional amino acid component. So this is one of the hypotheses as far as low serotonin levels, one of your good feeling neurotransmitters, are involved with fibromyalgia. Serotonin is synthesized starting from the essential amino acid tryptophan, which is found in a number of different meat products, not just turkey around Thanksgiving. The presence of non-absorbed molecules in the gut, primarily fructose. And I think we've done a talk in here probably a couple of years ago on too much fructose in the gut. My next slide will be a link on someone who can actually educate you on why fructose isn't necessarily good. But if you have a lot of that, it actually decreases tryptophan absorption. So let's go through a scenario here. Let's say someone's stress at home, stress at work. Let's say they're over the age of 40, which means you're naturally going to produce less digestive enzymes. Now you're under a ton of stress, and so you get put on something like an omeprazole or a Prilosec or something that blocks stomach acid even more. So now you're not going to absorb proteins adequately. Let's say you start craving those things like sugary drinks and fructose, which blocks even more absorption of things like tryptophan. Now you don't have the raw molecules to make things like serotonin. Long term down the road, you could experience things such as fibro. Obviously, this is just a hypothesis, but you can kind of see where chronic stress and diet and not digesting things eventually can play a role in a number of different diseases developing later in life. This was, and I know I've brought this up before, his name's Robert Lustig. He's out of the University of California, San Francisco. I believe he's in their pediatric endocrinology division. It's a 90-minute YouTube video. It's well worth it. I've listened to it 3 times. He does get into some of the science in the middle of it, but it's a pretty quick, instead of watching Netflix for a night. This actually helps explain why things like fructose, what they do to the liver. In fact, fructose, according to his research, is really no different than alcohol. Now, if you take too much alcohol at one time, it can kill you. It's not going to happen with fructose, but the same effects on the liver with long-term fructose exposure can actually happen similar to alcohol. And so it's well worth the watch if you guys have 90 minutes of spare time. Maybe for those kids at home, I think of virtual learning nowadays. When I was a kid in science class, they'd wheel in the TV, and then we knew it was going to be a good day. We'd have Bill Nye or someone on there. Maybe you can put Robert Lustig on there. And this is actually just one of the research studies. So research established that patients with fibromyalgia have significantly lower plasma concentrations of the amino acids tryptophan, histidine, and serine. And I believe tryptophan and, let me just check on histidine. If we go back to, so those were the two, tryptophan and histidine. They were essential. So you need to get them through the diet. As far as, well, how do I make sure what foods have all these? Generally, if you're getting good quality proteins, I myself probably eat about 3 eggs a day. So if you're getting eggs, wild-caught salmon, wild-caught game, I actually, and the staff just saw it here today, I had a big tub of pea protein sent here. So I'll be experimenting over the next 6 months with pea protein versus casein protein. So you can actually get a lot of this stuff in a big jug of it, $50 for a 5-pound supply, and you actually get all your essential amino acids. So if you're not getting it from the diet, you can supplement. Okay, a couple of simple tips for eating better. So, and kind of going back to, boy, it's so complicated, it's so expensive. Well, number one, chart what you eat. It's amazing when you actually start to write down what you're eating, how much over what you think you're eating. I think it's somewhere on the order of 40 to 50% over what, I think I eat 2,000 calories. Well, the average American probably 40 to 50% is eating more than that. And they actually tend to underestimate their exercise. So number one, start charting it. And it can be a number of things. For some people, calories works. I know even programs, Weight Watchers with the points. I always remember as a kid, my mom did Weight Watchers, and when she ran out of points, she switched to Atkins. And I'm not sure if you're supposed to combine the two, but it is a program, Weight Watchers, that they do a good job as far as tracking. So carbs is another really easy one. I know I had earlier this year, I had a young lady who had lost 70 pounds after the birth of her 2 kids, and she did it just counting carbs. In fact, her daily was 30 grams of carbs a day, and her cheat days were 40, which I estimated I was probably 50, 60, 70. I was actually closer to 150. And one of the biggest culprits, the sneaky carbs, salad dressing. So I was getting some prepackaged salads. It was 40 grams of carbs for every one of my little salads. So that's why I switched over the past few weeks to just 3 hard-boiled eggs for lunch. Number 2, have a goal. So this is, and they always talk about what makes diet plans successful. Writing it down where you have a goal you see every day and someone holds you accountable. I mean, those are probably the 2 most important. So whatever the goal is, and if you don't meet your goal in 1 month or 3 months, you can always reset the date. A lot of times people don't set a goal because they're scared of not completing it. 80-20 rule. During the summertime, I'll admit I'm more of a 50-50. As far as diet, you try to eat good 80% of the time, and the other 20%, maybe you're not as good. During the holidays and that rule definitely reverses for me. And last, supplement what's missing. So example, vitamin D, a multi, a digestive aid. Even if you look at all the supplements we have here, those are meant to supplement the diet, not replace the diet. So obviously as we get into this time of year, we're definitely into vitamin D season. So we'll be talking about that right now. You guys remember that movie Mean Girls? They fed her carbs or that, so she was not tracking her carbs and she put on weight. So officially we're entering cold and flu season. What should we start taking right now? G? C? D. D is correct. That's kind of one of those things where sometimes I figure everyone knows that, and even Dr. Bouch's like, nope, you got to repeat it, every single week. So we will talk about vitamin D. So this actually just came out September 3rd, so 2 weeks ago. But this was a latest study on vitamin D status with other characteristics with COVID-19. Not even sure if I can say that word anymore. And this was involving 500 people that had their vitamin D tested the year before and then this year during it. And you were actually up to 1.77 times greater for patients who had vitamin D status to get a positive test result with this. So this was just 2 weeks ago. But you see more and more of these studies coming out. This one I know I believe in June maybe I'd mentioned it, but this came out, I believe it was April, it was 212 people. What this graph represents is severity. And so that's always the biggest thing as far as, if you go back to one of my original slides, we have 400 trillion viruses in us. We're exposed to viruses all day long. In a given environment like this, if you take a look at a cubic meter, on average, there's 16,000 viruses, half of which contain influenza A. They're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. So the key is, how am I going to feel when I get exposed to those? Well, if I look at those that had the highest vitamin D level, over 30 nanograms per milliliter, so green means mild, red means severe. So once you got under 20, about half of those cases were severe. Once you got over 30, you see the majority of the patients, over 90%, had mild symptoms. I thought this was one of the neatest studies that originally came out right during the height of it. This should have been over every billboard, every newscast. This one came out shortly after. I know I've actually hung this up in our office. So same thing, you kind of see that 30 nanograms per milliliter. This was involving close to 800 patients, but here's the death rate, and you can see vitamin D concentration. So as you got above, in this case, over 34, people didn't succumb to this. So this, like I said, should be on every billboard. Everyone should have their levels at least, this is not even the minimum wage, 30. It should be closer to 50 to 80. Has anyone here got their vitamin D levels tested? No? So I generally get mine tested every few years. A good rule to go by is about 2,000 IUs per 100 pounds of body weight. So Jen needs less vitamin D than I do. I need about double. So I personally take 5,000 IUs of D3 a day, and I probably take it 6 days a week. Weekends, I'm a bad pill taker. The last time I got tested, I was right at 70. Okay, so I was way over here, I guess, on the graph. So general, if a person weighs 200 pounds, they should be taking 4,000 IUs of D3. It sounds like a lot. That's only 100 micrograms, which is 1/10 of a milligram. It's actually a very small amount. The problem here in Wisconsin, as you get into September through May, we just don't produce enough. We're not outside as much, and the sun's UVB rays are starting to hit too shallow to absorb enough vitamin D. You guys ever heard of this doctor? This just came out yesterday. He says it's fine to take vitamin C and D. So this is the first time I've heard him talk about nutrition. So that's kind of cool. So these are general cold and flu recommendations, irregardless of everything else that's going on. Vitamin D for prevention, 2,000 IUs per 100 pounds of body weight. So we like to combine ours with K2, D3 K2. Try to get your levels to 50 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. I know I've mentioned this in some talks before. It's, well, how do I get tested? If I go see my doctor across the street, it's a little bit pricier for a test. It's close to $300. If you go to a place like LabCorp down in Madison, they're doing it right now for $70, and you don't need a doctor's script for that. Zinc and vitamin C at the first sign of a cold. So at the first sign of anything, I want to be taking extra zinc. If I'm taking a quality multivitamin every day, I'm usually getting my RDA 10 milligrams a day. On our busier days in here, like say a Monday or a Friday, I usually take a little extra zinc in the morning. Watch sugar. If you guys watch that Dr. Lustig presentation, one of the worst things, especially is when you look at Christmas time, we're inside, we're stressed out, we're low in vitamin D, and then what do? We go eat a bunch of sugar, which suppresses our immune system even more. So especially this year, trick-or-treating, I feel bad that might not be able to trick-or-treat, but they should be giving out granola bars or something healthy. Maybe some of our, what are those, the veggie antioxidants. The last thing, try to mitigate stress the best you can. So by mitigating stress, it's how do you healthily get rid of stress? Well, you can't get rid of it, so you might as well try to adapt to it. So going for a walk, I call it the golden hour, the first 30 minutes a day, the last 30 minutes a day. Try to do something positive, watch a comedian, something inspirational, prayer, meditation. Those are the best times of the day to do it. As far as stress goes, you have eustress and you have chronic stress. So not all stress is bad. When you go to a gym and you stress your muscles, that's good short term. Long-term stress, not so good. And that comes in chemical, physical, emotional. So chemical would be the food that you put into you, what type of environment you're in. Physical stress, emotional stress, a little bit of stress is good. Chronic stress is not good. This right here, kind of says, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. So stress response hormesis, and I'll actually show you a graph on the next page. So, anything that's hormetic, basically it's a bell-shaped curve. And the graph that I show on the next page will actually help explain that. So let's use an example like water, okay? So is no water good for you? That would be bad, okay? How about too much water? You guys remember back, gosh, that had to be, it's over 10 years ago, but there was a radio show contest. It was called Don't Go Pee for a Nintendo Wii. And basically you had to drink as much water as possible, and on this radio show contest without going to the bathroom, and the lady ended up drinking a couple gallons of water, and it basically diluted her electrolytes, and she basically drowned. So don't drink too much water. So that's why we usually tell people about half their body weight. I say now about a third to half your body weight in ounces of water. So hormesis, and this applies with a lot of different things, including exercise. If you didn't exercise at all, let's say you did Ironman triathlons every day, that would not be good for you as well. Moving on, last topics, we've gone through move well and we've gone through eat well. I decided to do a little reverse order today. Last one we'll talk about think well. So this was kind of neat. This is 15 years old, but the National Science Foundation published an article summarizing research on human thoughts per day. The average person has about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. And I always joke around, guys, we probably have 1,000 and women have 100,000, so then it averages out. But of those thoughts, though, and this is where it gets a little scary, 80% were negative and 95 were exactly the same repetitive thoughts as the day before. So that's why in neurology they always talk about what fires together wires together. Think of your habits you do every single morning and why it's so tough to change. You know, if you're thinking up to 60,000 thoughts a day and 80% of those are negative and 95% are the same as the day before, there's no wonder why you're getting the same results that you've got in the past. So kind of a neat study. So, what can I do to start changing this? Try to break your habit every day. Take a different route to work. Even I've heard brushing your teeth left-handed to start out your day, just to try to ingrain changing your habits. So simple stuff. So we can see the tendency of the mind is to focus on the negative and play the same songs over and over again. And part of this, it's just our physiology. We're meant to see negative first. It's a protective mechanism. It was great 10,000 years ago, not when we have 24/7 news and constant things in our face that aren't exactly positive. So what are some tips for thinking better? First and last 30 minutes of the day are the most crucial. I mentioned that golden hour, so you break it up. So the first 30 minutes of the day, I generally, it's Monday morning and let's say I'm a little tired, I'll put on Jim Gaffigan. I'll listen to a comedian. I try to do as far as prayer meditation in that first and last part of the day. This is one of the easiest things. Turn off the TV, social media, especially in that first half an hour of the day. Another thing that you can do, find out how your personality will affect how you deal with stress. So we actually did this in our office, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. But using something like a VIA survey, which Dr. Bouch went over, do you become more introverted or extroverted? I found out the way I handle stress, on Friday nights I need to read a book or watch a movie. And so it's kind of interesting to see how I respond to stress and how the team should deal with me here. In fact, we did it on every one of the people in here, which is kind of neat where Dr. Bouch is doing that now with different companies. But we have a couple of people here that aren't exactly morning people. So even Dr. Dustin up front says, we'll give Marissa the Marissa 10, give her 10 minutes to get in here before we're ready. But it was kind of neat just to see how stress can affect people differently. The last thing, gratitude journaling, and this can be as simple as what were 3 things that went good during the day. I do this every once in a while when I start to get a little more cynical and judgmental of people. So I'll do like 3 good things. I had a good breakfast. The temperature was nice today. I hit a green light where I always hit a red. It doesn't have to be something like, oh, I got a brand new car or a brand new outfit or something like that. Last slide, as we said, starting out, if you continuously compete with others, you become bitter, but if you continuously compete with yourself, you become better. And so hopefully tonight, some of the things that we went over, as far as the eat well, think well, move well, maybe you're doing great at, thinking great and you're positive, and maybe you're moving every day, but boy, maybe I'm lacking in the vitamin D, or maybe I'm, lacking some veggies. Try to pick one area that you can work on. Another book, I was going to put it up here. I kind of ran out of time before I put it up, or before I came in today. But it's called Ula, and they talk about 7 different areas of life, almost like that magician or the guy who spins plates at the circus. Okay, we're constantly trying to balance family with our career and maybe as far as your faith and then your fitness and that. So try to pick something you can work on every single, I try to do quarterly goals. And so the easiest ones are, in your field, your fitness, things like that. So, any questions at all from the audience?
Those 2 bottles in front of you.
Oh, yeah. I knew we had them come for something, just to remind me. So this, as far as supplements, and even where I always talk about supplements are meant to supplement, not replace a healthy diet. We usually do a supplement of the month here as we get it. Kids are starting to go back to school, or some of them are. This is standards, basically multi for the immune system. So this we use just like vitamin D as a prevention. It's called Immuplex, so we'll be doing this till the end of the month. Anytime that we have a supplement of the month up, we do 10% off that supplement for that month. The last thing that Jen had mentioned as well, as far as our partnership with Franck's Gym. So Dustin's still doing, Dr. Dustin, the classes 9 to 9:30 on Thursdays, correct? So, and that's all I have. Thank you all for, I said I was going to go till 47 after today. I was a little more punctual, so short and sweet today, but thank you all for coming tonight.